The emergency lights in the Galactic Council chambers turned everything red. Representatives from 47 species sat in their assigned seats, but nobody was calm. Fear filled the massive room like smoke. Stood at the central platform. His skin looked almost purple under the red lights. He was old, even and he had seen many crises in his long life. But this one was different. "The Hollow Swarm has taken the Pillar of Voices," he announced. His voice was heavy with worry. 200 hostages, 12 different species. They want us to dissolve the council and surrender all power to them. Whispers spread through the chamber. The Pillar of Voices was sacred to everyone. It held the historical records of every species in the galaxy. Thousands of years of memories, stored in ancient crystals that could never be replaced. An elderly with silver scales raised her thin hand. "What about military action? Surely we can send forces to—" "We tried," interrupted. "The swarm's soldiers are bioengineered. Our weapons do not work on them, and the pillar's structure is too delicate. If we use heavy weapons, we destroy everything we are trying to save." The chamber fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. They had no options. In the back of the room, Ambassador Ho listened carefully. He was the human representative to the council, a position that most species still found strange. Humans had only joined the galactic community 15 years ago. They were young, inexperienced, primitive by most standards. But Ho knew something that most of the council did not. He stood up slowly. Every eye in the chamber turned to look at him. Humans were still a curiosity to most species. They looked so soft, so fragile. No natural weapons, no special abilities, just pink skin and strange hair. Ho said, keeping his voice calm, "I may have a solution." Looked at him with barely hidden contempt. "Ambassador, this is not the time for—" "Humans have units trained for exactly this type of situation," Ho continued. "Small teams, specialists. They could enter the pillar, neutralize the swarm, and rescue the hostages." For a moment nobody spoke, then laughed. It was not a happy sound. "Human soldiers against bioengineered warriors," he shook his head. "Ambassador, your species is brave, but this is suicide. The swarm would tear your people apart." Ho did not react to the insult. He simply said, "With respect, I am not talking about regular soldiers." Something changed in the room. Leaned forward, her silver eyes suddenly sharp. "You are talking about your special forces." The words hung in the air like a threat. His expression changed from contempt to something else, something that looked very much like fear. "No," he said quickly. "Absolutely not." He asked. Moved to his control panel and pressed several buttons. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed classified files, intelligence reports that most council members had never seen. "I have studied Earth's military capabilities for years," said. His voice was different now. Lower, more serious. "What they call special forces are not normal soldiers. They are something else entirely." The display showed grainy images and text reports. Missions that should have been impossible. Enemy bases that went silent overnight. Targets that simply disappeared without explanation. "There are stories," continued. "A human team of 4 entered a fortified compound on Relay Station 7. 60 armed guards. The compound was designed to be impossible to infiltrate. The next morning, everyone inside was dead or captured. The humans walked out without a single injury." More images appeared, more reports. A warlord on the Outer Rim had an army of 3,000. He threatened human colonies. 2 weeks later, he was found dead in his own bedroom. His guards never saw anyone enter or leave. The chamber was completely silent now. "These humans do not fight like soldiers," said. "They fight like ghosts, like nightmares. Other species have elite warriors. Humans have something different, something that does not follow the rules of war." The human diplomatic watched from her seat near Ho. She had been military intelligence before joining the diplomatic corps. She knew exactly what was talking about, and she knew he was not exaggerating. Spoke carefully. If these humans can save the hostages. You do not understand, interrupted. Once you invite them in, you cannot control them. They will do whatever they decide is necessary, and what humans consider necessary. He paused. It keeps my people awake at night. Ho stepped forward. I understand your concerns, but right now 200 innocent beings are going to die. The swarm has given us 48 hours. We have no other options. The debate lasted 2 more hours. Species argued with each other. Old fears about humans surfaced. But in the end, necessity won over fear. The vote was close, 24 to 23. Demanded conditions. Only 6 operators, no heavy weapons, and we will have full surveillance. Every camera, every drone, every sensor. We will watch everything they do. Ho nodded, agreed. Sent the request to Earth immediately. The message was simple. Hostage situation, 200 civilians, heavily fortified position, bioengineered enemies. Standard parameters. The response came back in less than 5 minutes. Team dispatched, ETA 14 hours. That was all. No questions. No requests for more information, just acknowledgement and a timeline. Approached after the session ended. The old was standing by a window, looking out at the dying star that the station orbited. You truly fear them that much? Asked quietly. Did not turn around. My species has been part of galactic civilization for 12,000 years. We have seen empires rise and fall. We have fought in 100 wars. We have faced enemies that would make most species go mad with terror. He finally turned to look at her. His eyes were tired and old. In all that time, nothing has frightened me like the reports from Earth. Other species evolved to become stronger, faster, more deadly. Humans evolved to become more clever, more patient, more willing to suffer. They do not fight to win. They fight until the enemy no longer exists. Felt a chill run down her scaled spine. You have just invited wolves into our home, said. When this is over, you will understand why my people have nightmares about Earth. 14 hours. That was how long they had to wait. 14 hours until the humans arrived. Stood by the docking bay window and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, a small ship was moving toward them at impossible speed. Inside that ship were 6 people who had trained their entire lives for moments like this. She wondered what the council would think when they finally met them. Would they see monsters? Would they see heroes? Or would they see what saw every time she looked at Special Forces operators? Ordinary people who had simply decided that some things were worth dying for. The stars kept shining, the clock kept counting down. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the wolves were coming. The transport ship was small and unmarked. It had no weapons visible on its hull, no military markings, nothing to suggest what it carried inside. It docked at Bay 7 without ceremony, and the Council's welcome committee waited with nervous energy. Had insisted on being present. So had and a dozen other representatives. They wanted to see these legendary human warriors for themselves. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. 6 humans walked out. Blinked, then he blinked again. They looked ordinary, completely, utterly ordinary. Captain Dong came first. He was average height with short black hair and a calm face. He could have been a teacher or an office worker. Behind him came the others. Sergeant Hana was young, barely older than a student with quick eyes that moved constantly. Corporal 1 had a gentle face and carried a medical bag. Corporal Gi was tall and quiet. Private Bai was small, almost tiny, with her hair pulled back tight. Private was the largest, but even he was not particularly impressive by galactic standards. They carried small bags, that was all. No armor, no heavy weapons, no threatening equipment. Stepped forward. Where are your weapons, your gear? Dong looked at him with patient eyes. We travel light, he said simply. Examine them with curiosity. You are the team that will save 200 hostages from bioengineered soldiers. Yes, just the 6 of you. Dong almost smiled. We find that more people just get in the way. The council representatives exchanged worried glances. This was not what they had expected. They had imagined warriors in powerful armor, carrying weapons that could destroy buildings. Instead, they got 6 people who looked like they were going to a casual meeting. The briefing room was prepared with everything the council knew about the Pillar of Voices and the Hollow Swarm. Maps covered the walls. Intelligence reports filled the screens. Military advisors from 6 different species were ready to share their expertise. The human team ignored most of it. Instead, they asked strange questions. What is the ventilation system like? Hana asked. She was already working on a small tablet, her fingers moving faster than anyone could follow. The guards, do they rotate at regular times? Guy wanted to know. How are the hostages feeling? Scared? Angry? Have they given up hope? This came from one. Tell us about the swarm's leader. What does he want? Not his demands, what does he really want? Dong asked. The military advisors looked at each other in confusion. These were not the questions that soldiers usually asked. Where were the questions about enemy numbers, weapon capabilities, defensive positions? Watched with growing suspicion. You are not planning a standard assault, are you? Dong turned to face him. A standard assault against 47 bioengineered soldiers in a fortified position would kill most of the hostages. We do not do standard assaults. Then what do you do? We solve problems. Hana suddenly made a small sound of satisfaction. Everyone turned to look at her. She had connected her tablet to the council's information systems. I am in the Pillar's dormant networks, she announced. The technical advisor stepped forward, his scales turning pale. That is impossible. We have been trying to access those systems for 3 days. The encryption is old, Hana said. Really old. Your people probably forgot it was there. She turned her tablet around to show the others. I have full interior maps now. Every room, every corridor, every hidden space. The council representatives stared at her with a mix of amazement and fear. For the next several hours, the human team studied. They looked at maps. They read reports. They discussed options in low voices that nobody else could hear. They made notes and drew diagrams and asked more strange questions. And then they did something that confused everyone. They stopped working and ate dinner together. They sat in a circle on the floor of the briefing room, sharing food from containers they had brought with them. They talked and laughed. Guy stretched his long body like a cat. Bai pulled out a small book and read poetry between bites of food, told a joke that made Hana almost choke on her drink. Watched through the observation window. His hands were clenched with frustration. They treat this like a game, he said to. 200 lives depend on them and they are having a picnic. Was quiet for a moment. Perhaps, she said slowly, this is how they prepare. Could not stand it anymore. He entered the briefing room and walked straight to Dong. Captain, I must ask you directly. Do you understand the situation? Do you understand that if you fail, hundreds of innocent beings will die? Dong looked up at him. His face was still calm, still patient. I understand perfectly. Then why are you not more serious? Why are you not preparing? We are preparing. Dong stood up slowly. I have done this for 15 years. Missions like this, impossible odds, limited time, innocent lives at stake. I have done it more times than I can count. And you feel nothing. Dong considered the question. I feel everything. I feel the weight of those 200 lives. I feel the fear that I might fail them. I feel the knowledge that some of my team might not come back. He gestured to the others. But fear does not help. Panic gets people killed. We have learned to put our feelings aside and focus on the work. So we eat, we laugh, we stay human because that is what keeps us alive. stared at him for a long moment. My people have studied humans for years. We have never understood you. You are not supposed to understand us, Dong said. You are just supposed to trust us. The team gathered around the main display. Hana brought up her interior maps of the pillar. One entrance, she said, heavily guarded. They have set up defensive positions inside. Any direct assault would be a massacre. Sounds impossible, Bai said cheerfully. That is because you have not heard my plan yet. Hana zoomed in on a section of the map that showed the lower levels. The pillar has a waste recycling system, very old, very narrow, and very unguarded. Who was still watching made a disgusted sound. You cannot be serious. The recycling system is filled with toxic chemicals and biological waste. No species could survive the journey. One smiled. Good thing we are not most species. We can modify our gear to handle the environment, Hana continued. Once we are inside, we split up. Small teams moving quiet. They will never know we are there until it is too late. Dong nodded. Final plan review in 2 hours. Get some rest first. The team dispersed to prepare. One noticed something as she was packing her medical equipment. Several alien observers were watching them through the window, their faces pale and their bodies tense. Hana, she said quietly, why do they look so scared? Hana checked her tablet. She had been monitoring the station's communication channels. Apparently, our heart rates have not changed since we arrived. Not during the briefing, not during planning, not at all. So most species experience stress reactions when facing danger, increased heart rate, rapid breathing, hormonal changes. Hana looked up. Our vitals have been completely stable the entire time. They think we are either broken or not actually alive. One considered this, then she shrugged. Let them wonder. At the observation window, turn 2. I am beginning to understand your fear, old friend. Shook his head slowly. No, you are only beginning to glimpse it. Wait until you see what they do inside that building. In the briefing room, Captain Dong looked over his team one final time. 6 ordinary humans. No special powers. No enhanced bodies. Just training, determination, and the willingness to walk into darkness. Gear check in 90 minutes, he said. Then we go to work. The wolves were ready to hunt. The waste recycling system was exactly as bad as had warned. Toxic chemicals burned in the air. Biological waste floated in thick streams of dark liquid. The smell alone would have killed most species within minutes. The 6 humans moved through it like shadows. Their modified suits protected them from the worst of the environment, but the journey was still miserable. They crawled through pipes barely wide enough for a human body. They swam through sections flooded with contaminated water. They climbed through vertical shafts slick with something nobody wanted to identify. In the council's observation room, representatives from a dozen species watched in horrified fascination. The surveillance drones struggled to keep up with the humans. They moved too fast, too quietly, disappearing into shadows and reappearing somewhere unexpected. How are they doing this? Whispered one observer. The conditions should have killed them by now. Watched the screens without blinking. Humans evolved on a death world, she said softly. Their planet tried to kill them every day for millions of years. This is nothing to them. Inside the pillar, the team emerged from the recycling system into a maintenance corridor. Bai was the first one out. She checked both directions, then signaled the all clear. One by one, they pulled themselves from the toxic pipes and onto solid ground. They stripped off the outer layers of their contaminated suits, revealing clean gear underneath. Dong checked his team. Everyone was intact. He gave a silent nod and they began to move. The Pillar of Voices was ancient. Its corridors were tall and narrow, lined with memory crystals that glowed with soft blue light. Thousands of years of history surrounded them. Every species in the galaxy had stories stored here. The team moved through this sacred space like ghosts. Their footsteps made no sound. Their breathing was controlled and quiet. They communicated with hand signals, never speaking a word. Guy found a high position in an old observation tower. He set up his equipment and began scanning the building with thermal imaging. His voice came through the team's communication devices, barely louder than a whisper. 47 hostiles confirmed, 32 in the main hall with the hostages, 15 on patrol. Hannah found a data terminal and connected her equipment. Within seconds, she was inside the swarm's communication network. She did not jam it or shut it down. Instead, she listened. She learned the patrol patterns. She memorized the codes they used. She identified who was in charge and who was just following orders. Their commander is named, she reported. He is in the central chamber with the hostages. He sounds confident, too confident. Dong processed this information. Confident enemies made mistakes. They became predictable. One moved toward the hostage area. She found a ventilation shaft that overlooked the main hall and carefully positioned herself to observe. What she saw made her heart ache. 200 beings from 12 different species were huddled together on the floor. Some were crying. Some were praying. Some had given up and simply sat with empty eyes. Swarm soldiers stood guard around them, weapons ready. One noticed something else. 3 hostages were injured. An elderly had a wound on his side that was slowly bleeding. A young child was having trouble breathing. A diplomat was holding an arm that was bent at the wrong angle. Medical emergency, one whispered. 3 hostages need immediate attention. Dong acknowledged the plan would need to adjust. Bai had a different job. She moved through the lower levels, identifying structural weaknesses and placing small devices at key points. They were not bombs, they were breaching charges, designed to create escape routes if the mission went wrong. She also found something disturbing. Captain, she reported, they have explosives throughout the building, lot of them. This whole place is wired to blow. In the observation room turned pale. They are going to destroy the pillar, he said. They are going to destroy everything. Dong processed this new information. Can you disarm them? Not from here. There is a central control somewhere. I need to find it. Find it. Do not act until I give the order. The team continued moving. They were deep inside enemy territory now, surrounded by 47 soldiers who would kill them without hesitation. But they showed no fear. Their movements were calm and professional. Their breathing remained steady. Then something went wrong. Was moving through a side corridor when a door opened without warning. A swarm patrol, 3 soldiers, stepped out directly in front of him. For one frozen moment, everyone stared at each other. Then moved. The first soldier died before he could raise his weapon. Knife found the gap in his bioarmor and severed something important. The second soldier managed to open his mouth to shout, but no sound came out because his hand was already around his throat. The third soldier tried to run. He got 2 steps before caught him. The entire fight lasted 4 seconds. 3 swarm soldiers, bioengineered to be perfect warriors, died without making a single sound. Dragged the bodies into a storage room and continued moving like nothing had happened. In the observation room, absolute silence fell. The council representatives had just watched a single human kill 3 enhanced soldiers in less time than it took to blink. He did not even hesitate, someone whispered. Said nothing. Her silver scales had turned white. Dong's voice came through the communication channel. Report. 3 hostiles down, said. His voice was completely calm. No alarm raised, continuing to position. Good work. Inside the central chamber, Commander was getting impatient. The council had not responded to his latest demands. They were stalling, he knew, hopping for a miracle. Did not believe in miracles. He believed in power, and right now he had all the power. Prepare for the first execution, he ordered. If the council does not answer in 1 hour, we kill 10 hostages. His soldiers moved to select victims. The hostages screamed and begged. Some tried to resist and were beaten down. Through the ventilation shaft, one watched with cold fury in her heart. She wanted to act now to save these innocent beings, but she trusted her captain. She waited. Hana's voice came through the communication channel. They are going to start killing hostages in 1 hour. Understood, Dong replied. New timeline, we move in 45 minutes. Bai found the bomb control room. A single swarm soldier sat at a console, his hand resting on a dead man's switch. If he lifted his hand or if he died, all the explosives would detonate at once. Found the trigger, she reported. We have a problem, dead man's switch. If I take him out, everything blows. Can you bypass it? Bai studied the system. It was complex but not impossible. Yes, but I need time, and I cannot do it while he is watching. Guy, can you create a distraction at the right moment? From his position in the observation tower, Guy smiled. I can do better than that. I can see the console from here. When the moment comes, I can take him out and Bai can stop the signal before it reaches the explosives. How much time will she have? About 3 seconds. There was a pause. Then Bai's voice came back, steady and confident. 3 seconds is enough. Dong made his final calculations. The team was in position. The hostiles were mapped. The bomb system was identified. They had 45 minutes before the executions began. Final positions, he ordered. On my mark, we end this. Inside the central chamber, Commander looked at his watch. The council was running out of time. Soon, they would learn that the hollow swarm was serious. He had no idea that 6 humans were already inside his fortress, waiting in the shadows. And he had no idea that his death was already decided. In the observation room, finally spoke. They are really going to do it, he said. 6 of them against 47, and they are going to win. No one disagreed with him. Commander received the report with cold irritation. 3 of his soldiers were missing. They had gone on a routine patrol and simply vanished. Find them, he ordered, and lock down all corridors. Something is wrong. Throughout the pillar of voices, swarm soldiers began moving to new positions. Security tightened. Doors sealed. What had been a confident occupation was now becoming a nervous defense. Looked at the shadows with new suspicion. He had heard stories about human special forces. He had dismissed them as propaganda. Now, standing in the ancient hall with 200 hostages at his feet, he was not so sure. Increase patrols, he said. Check everywhere, and if you see a human, do not hesitate, kill them immediately. From the ventilation shaft above, one heard every word. She updated the team through her communication device. They know we are here. Security is increasing. Dong did not hesitate. We move now. All teams execute. Everything happened at once. Guy took his shot. 400 meters away, through a ventilation shaft barely wider than his fist, his bullet found its target. The swarm soldier at the bomb console died instantly, his hand lifting from the dead man's switch. Bai moved before the body hit the floor. Her fingers flew across the console, entering commands she had memorized during her observation. The signal tried to reach the explosives. She stopped it. 2 seconds. The timer kept counting down. More commands, more desperate typing. 2.5 seconds. The system acknowledged her override. The bombs went silent. Explosives neutralized, she reported, her voice steady despite the sweat running down her face. Hana activated her prepared programs. False communications flooded the swarm's network. Enemy soldiers received contradicting orders. Some were told to move left, others right. Some were warned about attacks that did not exist. The disciplined organization fell into chaos. Their communications are compromised, Hana announced. They are confused and scared. Perfect. Moved into the main corridor and made himself visible on purpose. Swarm soldiers saw him and shouted alarms. Finally, an enemy they could fight. 12 soldiers rushed toward him. Was not a small man, but he was still just one human against 12 bioengineered warriors. The swarm soldiers were faster, stronger, and more heavily armed. By all logic, he should have died in the first 5 seconds. He did not. The corridor became a nightmare, moved with brutal efficiency, using the narrow space to prevent the soldiers from surrounding him. He took wounds, a slash to his arm, a blow to his ribs, but he did not stop, could not stop. Every second he fought was a second his team had to complete their objectives. In the observation room, council representatives watched in stunned horror as one human fought 12 enemies simultaneously. He was bleeding from multiple wounds. His movements should have been slower by now, but he kept fighting. "Why does he not fall?" asked. His voice was barely a whisper. Could not answer. She had no words for what she was seeing. While drew attention, Dong and One reached the hostage chamber. The guards there were distracted by the sounds of fighting. They did not see the 2 humans enter through a side passage. Dong took the first guard with silent efficiency. One took the second. By the time the hostages realized what was happening, 4 swarm soldiers were dead. "Everyone stay calm," one said in 7 different languages. "We are here to help. Stay quiet and follow our instructions." The hostages stared at her with wide eyes. This small human woman had just killed 2 soldiers without making a sound. They obeyed. One moved to the injured hostages immediately, the elderly with the bleeding wound, the young child with breathing problems, the diplomat with the broken arm. Her medical training took over. She worked fast, stabilizing each patient. "You are going to be okay," she told the child. "I promise." Dong secured the chamber and began organizing the hostages for evacuation. Hana guided them through safe corridors, avoiding the remaining swarm patrols. Commander realized too late what was happening. His soldiers were confused by false orders. His communications were compromised. And somehow, impossibly, the hostages were being rescued right under his nose. He gathered his remaining loyal soldiers and moved to stop the evacuation himself. Dong met him in the central hall. Was not like his soldiers. He had been engineered specifically for combat, faster than any normal being, stronger than anything human. His body was a weapon designed by the best scientists the swarm had. "Human," he said, looking at Dong with contempt. "You think you can stop me? I was built to destroy things like you." Dong did not respond with words. He simply raised his hands and prepared to fight. The battle was brutal. Was everything his engineers had promised. His speed was incredible. His strength was overwhelming. Dong blocked a punch and felt his arm go numb. He dodged a kick that cracked the stone floor where he had been standing. For every hit Dong landed 3. The human captain was losing. Everyone could see it. His movements became slower. His breathing became harder. Blood ran from cuts on his face and arms. Grabbed him by the throat and lifted him off the ground. "This is the best humanity has to offer," he squeezed. "Pathetic." Dong could not breathe. His vision was darkening. He had seconds left. But he was smiling. "You are standing," he gasped, "exactly where I need you." Had no time to understand. The shot came through a ventilation shaft from a position that should have been impossible. 400 meters. A gap barely visible to the naked eye. A target that was moving. Guy made the shot anyway. His head snapped back. His grip on Dong released. His engineered body fell to the floor, dead before it landed. Dong collapsed beside him, gasping for air. "Captain," one ran to him. Her medical equipment was already in her hands. "I am fine," Dong coughed. He looked at his broken arm, at the bruises covering his body, at the blood soaking his uniform. "Mostly fine." In the bomb control room, Bai finished her work. Every explosive in the building was now disabled. The pillar of voices was safe. In the corridors stood over the last of his opponents. 12 bioengineered soldiers lay around him. He was barely standing, his body covered in wounds that would have killed a lesser being. Hana guided the last group of hostages to the evacuation point. All 200 confirmed safe, she reported. No civilian casualties. The remaining swarm soldiers, seeing their commander dead and their organization in ruins, surrendered. It was over. In the observation room, nobody spoke for a long time. The council representatives had watched 6 humans infiltrate an impossible position, defeat 47 bioengineered soldiers, rescue 200 hostages, and disarm enough explosives to destroy a sacred monument. They had done it in less than 30 minutes. Turned away from the screens, his face was pale and his hands were shaking slightly. "Now you understand," he said quietly. Nodded slowly. "Now I understand." On the floor of the central hall, surrounded by the aftermath of battle, one helped Dong to his feet. "You let him beat you on purpose," she said, "to position him for Guy's shot." Dong winced as she supported his weight. It was the best plan. The best plan involved getting nearly killed. He managed a small smile despite the pain. "I trusted my team." Outside the pillar of voices, medical shuttles were arriving. Hostages were being reunited with families. News was spreading across the galaxy. 6 humans had done the impossible. And the galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. The medical bay on the council station was the best in 3 sectors. Doctors from 8 different species worked with equipment that could heal almost any injury. They had treated war heroes, disaster survivors, and diplomatic emergencies. They had never treated anything like the human team. Sat on a treatment bed while a doctor examined his wounds. The doctor kept shaking his head in disbelief. "You have 17 separate injuries," he said. 3 of them should have been fatal. How are you still conscious?" Shrugged, then winced at the pain. "I have had worse." Dong was in the bed next to him. His arm was broken in 2 places, and his throat was badly bruised from grip. The doctors wanted him to rest for at least 2 weeks. He was already asking when he could leave. "Captain, please," the lead doctor said. "Your body needs time to heal." "We have another mission scheduled," Dong replied. "Border dispute in the Outer Rim. They requested human advisors." One who was bandaging her own minor injuries laughed quietly. "Advisors, sure." In the council chambers, an emergency session was called. Representatives from 47 species gathered once again, but this time the mood was different. The fear was still there, but it was mixed with something else now, something like respect. Stood at the central platform. His skin looked tired, and his movements were slower than usual. The events of the past day had affected him deeply. "We have all seen the footage," he began. "We have all seen what the human team did inside the Pillar of Voices." Images appeared on the chamber's screens. The infiltration through impossible conditions, the silent movement through enemy territory, the brutal efficiency of combat, the rescue of every single hostage. "I have been afraid of humans for many years," continued. "I believed they were dangerous, unpredictable, a threat to galactic peace." He paused, looking out at his fellow. "I was right about the danger, but I was wrong about the nature of it." Rose from her seat. "What do you mean?" "I thought humans were monsters," said. "Wild creatures that would destroy anything in their path. But that is not what I saw yesterday. What I saw was 6 individuals who chose to enter a deadly situation to save strangers. They did not do it for glory or reward. They did it because it was the right thing to do." Ambassador Ho stepped forward. He had been waiting quietly at the back of the chamber, but now it was time to speak. He said, "I want to explain something about human special forces. They are not weapons, they are not monsters, they are volunteers. The word hung in the air. Every person on that team chose to be there, Ho continued. They chose to undergo training that breaks most people. They chose to accept missions where death is more likely than survival. They chose to become the ones who go where others cannot. He looked around the chamber at the dozens of alien faces. On Earth, we have a saying, some people run from danger and some people run toward it. Our special forces are the ones who run toward it, not because they do not feel fear, but because they believe some things are worth being afraid for. Elder entered the chamber. He was one of the rescued hostages, a historian who had been in charge of the Pillar of Voices. His wound was bandaged, but he insisted on attending. "May I speak?" he asked. The council granted permission. Moved slowly to the central platform. I have spent my entire life studying the histories of every species in this galaxy. I thought I understood what makes a people great: strong armies, advanced technology, political power. He turned to face the full council. I was wrong. Yesterday, a human medic crawled through a ventilation shaft to reach my side. She treated my wound while enemy soldiers walked below us. When I asked her why she was risking her life for an old she had never met, she said something I will never forget. The chamber was silent, waiting. She said, "Because you needed help, that is enough." His voice cracked with emotion. In all my years of studying great civilizations, I have never heard a simpler or more powerful philosophy. He presented a formal motion to the council. I propose that Earth be granted full membership in the Galactic Council. Furthermore, I propose that human Special Forces units be officially recognized as the Council's crisis response teams. The debate was shorter than anyone expected. Old fears were raised and addressed. Concerns about human unpredictability were balanced against the evidence of their discipline and professionalism. The vote was unanimous. Earth was now a full member of the galactic community. Later, as the team prepared to leave, approached Captain Dong in the docking bay. The old looked uncomfortable, as if the words he wanted to say were difficult. "Captain," he said, "I owe you an apology. I have spent years warning the Council about the dangers of humanity. I called you wolves, monsters, nightmares." Dong waited patiently. "I was not entirely wrong," continued. "What you did yesterday was terrifying, the efficiency, the silence, the absolute lack of hesitation." He paused, "but I missed something important." "What was that?" "You could have been monsters. You have the capability, the training, the willingness to do terrible things." Eyes met Dong's steady gaze. "But you choose not to be. You choose to protect. You choose to save. You choose to stop when the mission is done." He extended his hand in a human gesture of respect that he had clearly studied. "That choice is what makes you truly dangerous," said, "and it is what makes you worthy of trust." Dong shook his hand firmly. "Thank you." The team boarded their transport. Guy took his position. Hana began checking communications. Bai and argued about who had gotten more injuries. One reviewed her medical supplies. Hana pulled up their next assignment on her screen. Border dispute in the Outer Rim. The local government says they just need advisors. Guy laughed. "They always say that." "How long until we arrive?" Dong asked. 18 hours. "Good, everyone get some sleep." The transport lifted off from the council station and moved into open space. Behind them, representatives from dozens of species watched them go. Young aliens pressed against the observation windows, pointing at the human ship. A child asked their parent, "Are humans really that scary?" The parent remembered the footage. 6 ordinary-looking beings who walked through poison, fought impossible enemies, and saved 200 lives. They had been calm the entire time. Professional, almost casual. "No," the parent finally answered. "They are not scary, they are something much stranger. They are kind. and that is what makes them terrifying. On the transport ship, one looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were in trouble. Innocent beings needed help, and her team would be there. It was that simple. Dong's voice came over the communication system. "Get some rest. We have a long trip ahead." The team settled in for the journey. They told jokes. They shared stories. They acted like ordinary people. Because that was what they were. Ordinary people who did extraordinary things and then went home and lived ordinary lives. That was what the galaxy would never truly understand about humans. That was what made them special forces.